guys, so I'm on my morning drive to work, and here I have decided to make my second video. It's not the video I thought I was going to make, but it's the one that I feel called to make, so I'm going to make it. And today I'm going to talk about the bond that we have with our toxic lives. I'm going to talk about why people have such a hard time getting out of their toxic lives, right? We all know that person. We all know that person, or maybe we are that person, or maybe we've been that person that is clearly in a shit situation, a situation where the people around them are not good for them, where their job sucks, right? Because it's not aligning with them, and everything around them is holding them back from their truest potential, right? And every one of those people has a friend that's like, hey, just do this, stop doing that, right? Because the friend sees it. Friend always sees, because we're on the outside, right? So what ends up happening is this person gets stuck in this loop, right? It's this loop where they're just constantly in misery, and they're constantly living in this toxic world, right, that they've created for themselves. And we ask, oh, why me? These usually people in this situation, they start blaming others or feeling sorry for themselves and going, oh my God, why me, no me? Well, why you? Because you chose it, right? You chose to live in that situation because there's something to learn about it. And the second that you choose to unlive in that situation, life will change, right? So let me explain what I mean by that, because a lot of people will say, oh, well, that's not fair. Well, it is fair, and we've all been there. And as I've said yesterday, the universal love language, God's love language, is tough love, right? God loves us enough that he wants us to learn. So as a mom, when my kid is going to do something that I know is not good for him, I don't do what a typical mom would do. I don't stand in front of him and go, yo, you're not allowed to do that. You're going to hurt yourself. Don't do that. Instead, I say, son, if you do that, this is going to happen. And I'd appreciate it if you didn't do that, because I don't want to see this happen to you. And to give my son a choice. And my son can go, oh, no, Mom, I got it, just like I did when I was a kid. Or my son can go, okay, Mom, you know what? Yeah, I'll take your word for it. Typically, he doesn't take my word for it. And typically, he goes and he hurts himself. And at that point, guess what I do? I don't go, oh, you poor thing, come here, let me fix it. No, I go, well, I warned you. There's your consequences. Now, pick yourself up. Wipe your legs off. Go get a Band-Aid. You're fine, right? And to some people, that might sound like a really harsh way to be, but I'm only living by universal law, right? Because that is how the world works, right? That is how our situations work. So when we choose, right, we're warned all the time. We're given signs all the time. Hey, this person's not good for us. Hey, I got this gut feeling that this might not be the job for me. And then, or this might not be the friend for me, or I got a bad feeling about this person. But you still choose to do it. You choose to enter into that relationship, or into that job, or into that whatever, into that connection with whatever it is. And that's a choice you're allowed to make, right? We all have free will here, and that free will is there so that we can learn, so that we can have experiences, right? So with every choice, there comes a consequence that we can perceive as good or bad, right? Usually people perceive what we would think of as a negative consequence as something bad. Ironically, I, on the other hand, don't see it that way, because I've learned better, right? When something is expressing itself in a painful way to me, it's trying to show me that I need to learn from it. So I've changed my dialogue from, why is this happening to me, to, all right, what are you trying to teach me? And when I start communicating with, that universal love that's trying to teach me something, I usually get an answer pretty dang quick, right? It's not a voice that comes to me and says, this is what I'm trying to teach you. It just presents itself, right? And so at that point I can go, oh, yeah, I see that. Or I can go, oh, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to see how this plays out. And it's all right. The universe is always going to be, or God, I use God and universe interchangeably, guys. So God is always going to be like, well, do you, right? Go ahead, because God loves us. God truly and unconditionally loves us. And when you truly and unconditionally love something, you take your feelings out of it, right? So going back to my son, yeah, do I as a mom want to see my kid hurt himself? Absolutely freaking not. That hurts me to see him hurt himself. But I love my son enough to give him the freedom to make his own choices, right? So how does this correlate with what I'm talking about, people in their toxic lifestyles, right? Okay, so here we are, we're all human beings. We are all children of God or the universe or whatever you want to call it, right? We all were created by something. right? And that something loves us. And so that something designed a world to teach us. And that's where we are right now. We're in a world that is teaching us. And so we have these situations where our lives are miserable. And we're like, oh my God, like, why does this suck so bad, right? And all that we have to do is make a choice to learn, right? All we have to do is start asking the magical, most important question. We ask why. Okay, so why? Why am I miserable? Why am I feeling like this? Why is this happening, right? But don't just ask that question in vain, like, why? Like, all dramatic. But instead, like, ask that question and, like, really analyze it. Pick it apart, right? So, give you an example. Say that you're in a job that you hate, right? Or even better, say that you're in a relationship with somebody that is, like, not going good, right? So, you're like, oh, like, it's easy to blame that person. It's easy to be like, oh, this person's, you know, just inconsiderate and a POS, right? Okay, or maybe not, right? Let's just ask why. For the sake of it, let's just say that all human beings are decent human beings and that, you know, choices and being blinded by things are what come in the way of stuff, right? Let's just, for the sake of anything, believe that. So let's say that your boyfriend's really not he's not out to get you, because chances are if someone's in a relationship with somebody, they're probably not out to get them. They probably want to have a happy relationship, but they're all blocked and they may not know how, right? Because they're not asking questions why, right? So when you're in a toxic relationship, how many of you have ever asked yourself, you know, what can I do better? Why isn't this working, right? And instead of going, oh, it's all them, or something that us women tend to do more than anything, going, oh, it's all me. No, there's always a happy median, right? But chances are it does start with you because you're the one with the perception that it's bad, right? So, for example, you're in this relationship, you know, there's not a lot of respect, not a lot of good communication going on, and it seems that the other person is pretty selfish, right? Okay, well, typically what happens, not typically, always what happens is our world is a projection of ourselves, right? Usually we're not able to see ourselves, but luckily there's this little thing called projections where we project out to the world and we attract what is within us. So when you are attracting a lot of pain, that means there's a lot of pain in you. When you're attracting selfish people, it typically means that you're acting selfish in some way, right? Or when people treat you terribly, it's typically because you treat yourself terribly. And when I say selfish, I want you to understand, I think selfish is a great thing, but when I'm referring to selfish right now, I'm referring to the kind that's more like malicious, right? When you're ignoring everyone else around you's needs and you're sort of putting them down so that you can get what you want, right? That's kind of messed up, right? I'm not talking about selfish as in I'm going to do me and I'm going to give everybody the opportunity to do them. This is a little different. So anyways, right? So you're in this relationship and you can't figure out why it's so crappy. Right? But then you get out of that relationship, you move to another relationship, that one got kind of the same thing starts to happen. It starts out great, you know, ties you in enough, and then all of a sudden it's crappy, right? And then you're having the same relationship maybe with family members, you're having the same relationship with coworkers. You can't figure out why people are so shitty, right? Time to look within, guys. Time to look within, because we cannot fix other people. And there's this little saying that says there's a different version of you running around in every single person's mind that you've met. So we don't actually know anybody. We only know what we think of people, right? And nobody actually knows us. They only know what their perception allows them to see. So that's really important to remember when we're dealing with people. So one thing that really, really helped me get past my time where I was having a really hard time with myself was I had to hold myself accountable, right? So when I'd meet somebody and they'd really annoy me, right? There'd be something about them that super annoyed me. Instead of going, oh God, this person's so annoying, they talk too much. This is my favorite one, right? Because I talk a lot. So I used to hate when I'd meet people that just talk enough, like talk way too much, right? And so I would be like, oh my God, like does this person not know how to shut up? And then I started to ask, well, why does that bother me? Oh, I know why that bothers me. It bothers me because I talk a lot. And at the time, I was uncomfortable with the fact that I talked a lot because I was always told to shut up. I was always told as a kid that I talked too much. So I associated something about me as a negative thing. Guys, we all do this, right? We take other people's opinions of us, and whether we realize it or not, we let it register as good or bad in our minds, right? So because of that, because I wasn't comfortable with that piece of me, I used to always try to make myself shut up. Or I'd meet people that talked a lot and I'd be like, oh my God, right? That really bothers me. And then one day I realized, oh, I don't hate them, I hate myself. Wait a minute, woo, ding, 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 right? That's the answer. You don't hate people. There are things about yourself that you can't stand. So those are the whys you have to ask. Why can't I stand that? Go back to the beginning, figure it out, right? When you start doing that, you start working on yourself. Now all of a sudden, you're loving yourself, right? You're giving yourself the time to say, why am I having this problem? Okay, let me work it out. Let me figure it out. I'm gonna figure this out. And next thing you know, you start building yourself. And let me explain something to you guys. As this happens, relationships around you are gonna fall apart, because as those toxic relationships are no longer needed, because you've learned the lesson, right? You've decided, oh, all right, I'm above this now. I don't need this anymore. People are gonna start falling away from you. And a lot of times people try to hold on to that, right? You try to hold on to those bonds with that toxicity. And let it go, guys, because it is opening a door for a new version of you. And that's gonna happen so many times in your life until you find yourself right where you want to be, right? Because you're always going to align with what reflects in you. So when you no longer are toxic to yourself because you start working yourself out, you're not going to align with those people anymore that held you in this toxic space. And they weren't holding you in that toxic space because they're like, ha, we're going to fuck with her. No, they're holding you in that space to teach you. And they don't even realize that they're teaching you, right? Because no one actually realizes how much they teach each other. But if you listen, if you pay attention, everyone in your life is a teacher. You are never at a point too high to learn something. You can learn from anything. And listen to your children, because let me tell you, your children, they're more wise than anyone you'll ever meet. And they came here to teach you. So anyways, now that part starts falling away, and you start to align with higher, better things, right? Guys, it's normal on that journey to feel bad about yourself. It's normal, because that's fear. Because change is something that sort of terrifies a human being. So you feel good about loving yourself more, but you feel bad about your life changing around you. And that typically makes someone want to go backwards. But then when they try to go backwards, they're even more miserable, because now they already have recognized the part of themselves, and now they know they're not being true to themselves. It's different when you don't realize that you're not loving yourself, and when you realize that you're intentionally not loving yourself. All of a sudden, that's even harder. And typically that doesn't last very long, because people can only stand so much pain that's self-inflicted. So with that being said, guys, I want you guys to understand, it is normal. It is totally normal to suffer down the journey. It is totally normal to not recognize how far you've come. It is totally normal to feel uncomfortable. As a matter of fact, you're supposed to feel uncomfortable, right? Pain is what causes growth. Pain exists on this earth to help us grow. Otherwise, it's not necessary, right? Once you've learned everything you need to learn, pain's actually not necessary anymore. Emotions aren't actually necessary anymore. But it's necessary here, right? When you stub your toe and it hurts, you're like, ow, and it makes you not want to do that again. When you touch fire and it burns and you have a blister and you have to deal with that for a week, you're like, okay, I'm never going to do that again, right? When you put yourself in a relationship where you're constantly getting hurt and then you get out of it, chances are, if you learn something, you're going to go, I actually don't want to do that again. Because I'll tell you, the relationship that I got into, I had one relationship that really broke me down. And after that, I was like, I am never putting myself last. And of course I had to learn, there was more to learn down the road. There's always more to learn. Well, it didn't mean I was perfect at relationships after that, but it means I was done putting myself last in a relationship, because that sucked, right? That really sucked. So I want you guys to understand that healing is a process. It's a journey. It's not an overnight journey. And everybody's timeline looks different. And everybody starts at a different time. And everybody ends at a different time. And it's unique to everybody. And I want you guys to start loving yourself and falling in love with the journey. Because that's the stuff that's going to make something for you. That's the stuff that's going to mean something to you when it's done. When you look back in your life and you go, wow, I used to be like that, and I used to do this, and I used to hurt myself here, and I used to hurt other people here, but now I don't do that. Look how much I've grown. That's something to be proud of. But we all do this thing, right, where we only pay attention to the goal, we don't pay attention to the journey, right? So we all do this thing where we're like, this is who I want to be, and I'm just going to focus on being that person, but I'm not gonna love this person that's going through this journey. Well, guys, it's going to take a long time for you to get to that person, and you're not going to get to that person until you love every piece of you. And as pieces of you change and evolve, they need loving.